We are just 2 weeks away from Sacrifice. Mike Santana versus Steve Maclin for the TNA World Championship is locked in. The Hardys keep on rolling. Trey, Miguel, BDE, and Rick Swann had one of the most fun matches of the show. Steve Maclin grabbed a microphone and decided to be the most disrespectful man in that building. Moose and Cedric Alexander beat each other up in a street fight, and TNA somehow gave us Rosemary, Swinger's Palace, and the return of Allie in the same episode like they were spinning a wheel backstage. Impact had a little bit of everything this week. So without further ado, welcome to the T-Drop, Strong Brew, No Soft Behavior. We are here a few weeks from Sacrifice. We're getting so close from Sacrifice. And the big thing right now is that TNA has its world title match ready to go. We have Mike Santana defending against Steve Maclin. And honestly, that should be a fight. So that's mainly the reason I'm interested in Sacrifice. Based on all the stories developing throughout the weeks, this is the match to see, obviously, for Sacrifice. This episode felt like one of those classic TNA table setting shows. Not everything was major, not everything was must-see, but almost everything had a purpose. And by the end of that night, you had a much better picture of what this card is starting to look like for Sacrifice. The Hardys handed business. Indi Hartwell makes her intentions very clear. Order 4 finally got involved in something actually fun. Maclin went full menace on the microphone, and Moose continues his very committed campaign of beating people up like he gets paid by the bruise. So without further ado, let's get into TNA Impact. The first match is the Hardys versus Sinner and Saint. We open with them, and looks like this is exactly what this needed to be for an opener match. Matt starts by backing Williams into the corner, but Williams spins out of a wrist lock. Matt answers by just ramming into the buckle repeatedly, which is just about as Matt Hardy a response as you can get from him. Jeff comes in, works the arm, and they hit poetry in motion to keep things moving. Then Icarus gets a little something going on Matt's arm, but it really doesn't last long enough because the Hardys pretty quickly get back in control. Jeff gets dropped at one point. Icarus hits a frog splash for 2. Matt has to make the save. Everything breaks down. The Swanton gets interrupted, and Jeff ends up trapping Williams in that reverse full Nelson called Spinal Destination for the tap. First of all, Spinal Destination is an elite move name. Tremendous work here. Second, there's really not much to overthink here. Sinner and Saint are one of those teams you put out. They're one of those teams you put out there when you need a credible set of opponents who can lose without killing the mood. They're good enough to give the champs something to do. And the Hardys get to stay strong while TNA keeps hinting that the Righteous are still hanging around for another title shot. That all makes sense. Then after the match, Jeff gives William a swanton anyway, which honestly felt a little rude for a match they already won. Then they shake hands after the cheap shot. So the post-match energy was basically no hard feelings. Also, please enjoy the extra violence. We get Nemeths, Elegance, Brand, Goldilocks, and Indi Hartwell making their case throughout the match. But first, we get a backstage promo from the Elegance brands, and they are yelling about ODB and Mickey, but they're more focused on Mr. Elegance debuting next week, which I honestly, before I started watching TNA, I thought he was already wrestling, but I guess not. Then former TNA interviewer Goldilocks shows up, of all people, and starts yelling at them too. And Mr. Elegance hits her with, "Weren't you working here when I was like 4 years old?" That's one of those lines that's either disrespectful, hilarious, or both, depending on your mood. To me, it was fine. Then we get Indi Hartwell versus Kelsey Heather. This is basically a showcase, and it works fine. Indi controls things early, works the wrist, tosses Heather around a bit, shrugs off Heather's offense. Then after Heather misses a moonsault, Indi drops her with the spine buster and finishes with the Hertz donut. That's how they call it, the Hertz donut. Okay. Quick, clean, effective. After the match, Indi gets on the mic and says she wants the Knockouts title because the current champion doesn't deserve it. That brings out Ariana Grace and Stax. Grace tells her to get in line, and Indi says she didn't get a title handed to her. That's a pretty direct shot, and honestly, fair enough. Then, later backstage, Ariana is furious that everybody keeps coming after her title, especially after last week when everyone was surrounding her in the ring after her match. Stax tries to calm her down, and they jump Indi with Grace, smashing her in the knee with the belt. Then Santino Marella shows up out of nowhere, and they yell a lot, which is kind of the default for them at this point, but it is what it is. So Indy is clearly getting moved into the title picture in the next couple of weeks, and the angle is simple enough. She wants the belt. Grace doesn't want the smoke, and Stack keeps helping her to do her dirty work. Easy enough. We get later another backstage segment where the Hardys thank the Righteous for what they did. The Righteous say they liked what the Hardys did to Sinner and Saint, and Vincent warns them that the system is coming for the belts, but the Righteous will be there for them. Then the Nemeths walk in, immediately killing the vibe as they always do. The Righteous don't like the interruption, but Nick reminds everybody that the Nemeths pinned Jeff. And then they laugh as they leave. So that's a good little tag traffic there. The champs, the weird spiritual backup crew, and the smug guys who won't stop reminding you they already beat somebody. A solid cluster of tension. Obviously, we will see what happens in the next week because they're getting a match. Next, we get Order 4 versus Trey, Miguel, BDE, and Rick Swann. And this was probably the most purely fun thing on the show. Order 4 jumps them right out of the gate. BDE gets rammed into the post, and the heels keep control early with Allie and Skylar working them over. Ali gets in some nice, nasty offense. Skylar suplexes BDE hard into the corner, and they keep the pace moving until the commercial break. Then after we come back, the match just keeps flying. Swann comes in striking, plants Ali with a head scissors, and once everything starts breaking down, the whole thing becomes a scramble in the best way. Swann frog splash gets 2 on Ali. Miguel comes in. Ali goes to the eyes. Miguel stomps Skylar. Tasha Steelz tries to distract. Jada Stone runs down to cut her off. Those two start brawling into the crowd. BDE gets dropped with a nasty spinning backbuster. Ali dives on Miguel. Skylar spears Swann on the apron. Miguel hits the shell shock on Skylar and then lands the lightning spiral for the pin. This was chaotic blast watching everywhere. Like, ridiculous match, but fun nonetheless. It had a fast start. It kept the energy up throughout the match, and it didn't slow up much at all. And by the end, Trey Miguel looked like a star. And that matters because TNA needs more matches like this, stuff that feels lively, modern, and like it has actual urgency. What I also like to see is Ali actually win something important for a change. Yeah, it hasn't happened, but this was still one of the better things on the show that night. Then we get the world title story moving again. Mike Santana finds Dari Ray, who tells him that if he touches Steve Maclin, he'll be stripped off the title. Damn. Then Santino Marella shows up and says if Maclin touched Santana, Maclin is out of TNA. So that's going to be the thing between them two. One says one thing, one says the other. One says the answer A, one says the answer B. You pick what you want to choose. I don't know. This interesting structure from them too. Then Maclin walks in, stares Santana down, and heads to the ring. Maclin says he's happy to be back and that it feels like he never left. He says he's required to apologize, so he has a prepared statement. And then this man immediately goes in the opposite direction of apologizing, following a similar suit, I guess, of CM Punk's. He thanks Dari Ray and says that she's much better than Santino. He says it's a shame his friendship with Tom Hannafin ended this way, but that's because Hannafin couldn't take a punch to the gut. Then he goes after Santana from the ring while Santana watches from the crowd. Maclin says he lost the world title because of backstage politics. Then he starts taking shots at Santana in a much more personal way, basically mocking the idea of playing the sympathy card, referencing VA meetings and voicemails from his dad so people will feel sorry for him. I mean, if you know Santana's true background story, I don't think he's playing the sympathy card, he's just saying how it is. It was a nasty shot by him. Maclin says he has met death before and knows what it is, which is part of why he's playing Santana so easily. Then he closes with mayhem is for everyone, including Santana. It was good stuff, this promo. Maclin came off like a vicious, bitter psycho who thinks he's the only real man in the room, while Santana comes off like the champion trying not to lose control. It's a solid feud dynamic, and it's probably going to be one of the biggest and best things of Sacrifice. We get AJ Francis versus Elijah. And on ringside, we continue with this thing. Last week, we had Honey Boo Boo's mom on ringside. This week, we have some of the cast of Tulsa King there. That's it. Tulsa King was there. Don't forget to watch AMC Plus. Yay. Then we get AJ Francis versus Elijah with Frankie Kazarian on commentary. Elijah starts fast, knocks Francis outside, gets some momentum, lands a running knee around the ropes. But AJ cuts him off with a pop-up right hand and starts bullying him around. Elijah gets back into it with an Alabama slam and jumping knee, and even lands the rope walk Canadian Destroyer for 2. Then Francis goes outside. Elijah throws a drink at Kazarian. Kaz gets a quick cheap neck snap over the ropes, and AJ finishes Elijah with down payment. So the match itself was whatever. The bigger point of this match is continuing the Elijah versus Kazarian feud, which still feels like one of those feuds where every time it comes on screen, your reaction is basically, yeah. It's not offensive, it just feels random a bit. Francis, meanwhile, is actually pretty effective as villain. I mean, if you've seen some of his tweets on X, the guy's vicious. So I'm more curious what he does next than I am about the actual feud that we're seeing. This match was a supporting thing for AJ, in my opinion. Then Kazarian attacks Elijah after the bell, and Hometown Man runs in with a pipe to make the save. So yeah, that's happening too. You've seen Kelsey Heather before? Where? Alright. We get next an announcement from Eric Young backstage. Eric says he's glad Leon Slater is injured and wants the X Division title shot at Sacrifice. That's a vile bit that he wants him. He's glad he's hurt. Because a good person will say, obviously, I want you full healed, but he's not doing it. TNA gives us one of the most TNA things imaginable. We go to Swinger Palace. Rosemary shows up. Swinger thinks she's a mixture of Sherry Martel and Papa Shango. JDC is laughing at Sinner and Saint for losing their money. Rosemary makes some kind of deal to keep the place open forever. And then Allie returns. Rosemary just goes, oh boy. And honestly, yeah, I feel the same way. I don't fully know what's happening in these segments half the time, to be honest, but I do have to appreciate that TNA never loses its ability to just show how weird continuity, cameos, and chaos into a blender and somehow call it television on their end. But that's TNA for you. You can't expect anything less from them. Ricky Sosa debuts this week. We get a match between him and Brad Attitude, which solid match for a debut. Apparently, he's a viral sensation, and this was a perfectly good debut, but it was also a squash match. Sosa looks smooth. He has some presence. The crowd liked him. He worked the arm, took a bit of adversity, landed some nice elbows, hit a pretty no hands dive to the floor, and then finished with a blue thunder bomb. That's all this needed to be. You give the new guy a few strong highlights, get him out before the crowd gets bored, and make people interested in seeing him again. Mission accomplished. Good job, TNA. Then we get the main event. Moose versus Cedric Alexander in a Atlanta street fight, with the system barred from ringside, by the way. Except Alicia Edwards is still there. So already the rules are a little decorative. Moose jumps Cedric fast, hits the backsplash for 2. They fight outside. Cedric gets in a surprise suplex. Then we get chair warfare. Moose gets the better of that exchange and chairs Cedric down as we head to a commercial break. Back from the break, Cedric is making his comeback and starts throwing a pile of chairs into the ring. Moose hits a choke bomb for 2. They fight outside again. Moose gets sent into the steps. Cedric loads up a stomp onto the steps, but Alicia gets involved just enough for Moose to turn the tide. Cedric power bombs Moose onto the ring. Onto a standing trash can, which looked rough. Back in the ring, Moose catches Cedric on top, and superplexes him onto a pile of chairs. Cedric lands a Spanish fly for 2. Moose answers with a nasty spear. Cedric wisely rolls outside to save himself, so Moose introduces a table. A table gets set up in the corner. Moose gets sent into a chair in the other corner. Cedric hits a brain buster that doesn't quite finish it, and then Moose just runs through him with a spear through the table for the win. It was a good hardcore style match. I wish they did just call it a hardcore style match, to be honest. I don't like they call it a street fight in there. I would like them for once literally fight in the street, but you can close off the street for a few hours and call it a street fight. Plant some seeds in there to make it look like a real area, but I guess it's a little too much work. And what helped it if they didn't go overboard with stupidity. They used weapons, but it still mostly felt like two guys just trying to beat each other down rather than doing 10,000 contrived spots to impress a highlight reel account. It worked for me very well. Moose wins and the path of destruction continues. Also, Alicia turning on Moose eventually still feels like the one of the easiest future angles to see coming. Overall, this was a pretty solid table setting episode of Impact. Not a blowaway show, not packed with all-time moments, but very easy to follow, and which is good for once. That's one thing TNA has actually been doing pretty well lately. They kept their stories understandable. You can jump in, figure out where things are headed, and not feel like you need a conspiracy board and 3 Reddit threads just to understand the damn card sometimes. This week keeps that going. The Hardys stay strong. Indi Hartwell moved closer to the knockout title picture again. And Trey, Miguel, BDE, and Swann deliver one of the most fun matches of that show. Steve Maclin gave the Santana feud some real venom. Ricky Sosa had a clean debut, and Moose vs. Cedric gave us the strong, simple street fight to close things out. If they keep building Sacrifice this way, clear stories, logical steps, a couple strong promos, and matches people can actually get excited about, this should be a good show. So let me know in the comments what stood out to you most from this week's Impact. Was it Steve Maclin absolutely unloading on Mike Santana? Was it the wild 6-man match with Trey, Miguel, BDE, and Swann? Or was it the return of Allie in the middle of TNA's latest Haunted Fever Dream side quest? Let me know in the comments. No soft behavior, strong brew. Well, I'll see you at the next TNA.